I'm going to preview the 1 seed South Carolina versus a 1 seed Iowa women's basketball game, which will be played tomorrow, April 7th at 2 p.m. Central Time on ABC/ESPN/ESPN Plus. South Carolina is 37-0 on the season and 16-0 in the SEC, while Iowa is 34-4 on the season, 15-3 in the Big Ten. So, what are some players to keep an eye on for both these teams? I'm going to start with South Carolina's side of things first. That will probably play in this game, and I apologize for looking down because I cannot memorize all this stuff here. And this is in no particular order, by the way, but first I'm going to start with Camila Cardoso for South Carolina. And I'm even going to say the height and the position and all this. She's a 6'7" center, and that is a senior for this year. And she is declared for the WNBA draft, so she's not coming back for a COVID year. 14.3 points per game, 9.5 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, 0.6 steals per game, 2.5 fouls per game, 1.5 turnovers per game, 2 fouls per game, 67.7% on free throws on 127 attempts, and 1 for 1 on threes, which was that 3-pointer against Tennessee. And that crazy win for them as the buzzer expired. Now, next player is Chloe Kitts. He's a 6'2" forward. That's a sophomore. 9 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, 0.6 blocks per game, 1.5 turns per game, 1.5 fouls per game, 69.3% on free throws on 88 attempts, 1 for 2 on threes. Okay, there's Bree Hall. 6-foot guard, that's a junior. 9.3 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 0.6 steals per game, 1.1 turns per game, 1.2 fouls per game, 70% on free throws on 50 attempts, 38.3% on threes on 128 attempts. And there's Raven Johnson, a 5'9" guard, that is a sophomore. 8.2 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, 4.9 assists per game, 2.1 steals per game, 1.6 turnovers per game, 1.2 fouls per game, 61.7% on free throws on 47 attempts, 36.8% on threes on 76 attempts. And the last starter for South Carolina is Te-Hina Paopoa, P-A-O, P-A-O. I apologize for butchering that. She's a 5'9" guard. That is a senior. 10.9 points per game, 2.7 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists per game, 0.8 steals per game, 1.6 turnovers per game, 0.6 fouls per game, 86.2% on free throws on 29 attempts, 46.2% on threes on 182 attempts. Okay, the next, I'm going to start with the bench players now on this, and it's Ashlyn Watkins, not a 6'3" forward. That is a sophomore. 9.4 points per game, 7.4 rebounds per game, 1.2 steals per game, 2.4 blocks per game, 1.5 turnovers per game, 2.3 fouls per game, 55.7% on free throws on 97 attempts, 0 for 1 on threes. So not really a 3-point shooter. Sanaya Fegan, a 6'3" forward. That's a junior. 6.7 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, 0.6 blocks per game, 1.1 turnovers per game, 1.9 fouls per game, 68.3% on free throws on 63 attempts, 14.3% on threes on 7 attempts. So not really a 3-point shooter. The other double-digit scorer for South Carolina is Malaysia Fulwiley, Milay Millaysia. I apologize if I butchered that. And Fulwiley. She's a 5'10" guard. That's a freshman. 11.8 points per game, 2.9 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game, 1.7 steals per game, 0.7 blocks per game, 1.7 turnovers per game, 2.2 fouls per game, 78.2% on free throws on 101 attempts, 34.3% on threes on 134 attempts. And the last player I'm going to mention for South Carolina is Tessa Johnson, a 6'1" guard. That is a freshman. 6.2 points per game, 0.7 steals per game, 0.9 turnovers per game, 0.6 fouls per game, 85.7% on free throws on 49 attempts, 42.7% on threes on 75 attempts. Yep. Sure, there's Samika Walker that's played in 30 games this year. I'm going to just go ahead and mention that. 2 points per game. Even though she might not play, but 0.9 fouls per game, 73.9% on free throws on 23 attempts. She's a 6'5" center that is a senior, by the way. And she hasn't played since that blowout game against the 8 seed North Carolina, but you never know. That's the thing. Now, I am going to the Iowa side of things, and I have to mention Caitlin Clark first. And we all know she's going to the WNBA, and she's projected to be number 1 overall. And she's the leading scorer in the country, number 1 in assists as well. Excuse me. .7 points per game, 7.3 rebounds per game, how assists per game. Oh, she's a 6-foot guard that's a senior, by the way. 1.8 steals per game, 0.5 blocks per game, since it's close to 0.6. 4.8 turnovers per game, 2 fouls per game, 86% on free throws on 258 attempts, 37.8% on threes on 519 attempts. And this is no particular. I'm going to go with Hannah Stuelke next, and she's a 6'2" forward. That is a sophomore. 14.1 points per game, 6.7 rebounds per game, 0.8 steals per game, 0.5 blocks per game, since it's close to 0.6, 1.7 turnovers per game, 2.6 fouls per game, 63% on free throws on 146 attempts, and 4 for 8 on threes. Cynthia Falter, I'm going to go ahead and mention next. She's a 5'11" guard. That's a junior. 8.3 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists per game, 1.1 steals per game, 1 turnover per game, 1.7 fouls per game, 82.5% on free throws on 103 attempts, 41.8% on threes on 55 attempts. And there's Gabby Marshall, a 5'9" guard that is a senior, and she will not be coming back to Iowa next year. She's using her 5th year right here. 6.1 points per game, 1.1 steals per game, 0.6 turnovers per game, 1.2 fouls per game, 5 for 10 on free throws, 35.2% on threes on 179 attempts. Kate Marshall, and Martin. Yeah, it's Martin. Yeah. 6-foot guard as a senior, and she's using her 5th year as well. 13 points per game, 6.8 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists per game, 0.9 steals per game, 0.5 blocks per game, 1.9 turnovers per game, 1.6 fouls per game, 86.6% on free throws on 97 attempts, and 37.3% on threes on 134 attempts. I'm going to go ahead and mention Addison O'Grady. I know she might not play a lot, but 6'3" forward, that's a junior. 4 points per game, 1.9 rebounds per game, 0.5 blocks per game, 0.5 turnovers per game, 1.4 fouls per game, 50% on free throws on 34 attempts. And she played very minimal. Is Taylor McKay, 5'9" guard. It's a sophomore, 3.4 points per game. 5 for 6 on free throws, which is 83.3%, and 46.1% on 46.1% on threes on 76 attempts. And that's Kylie Feuerbach, 2.7 points per game. 0.7 steals per game, 0.8 turnovers per game, 1.1 fouls per game, 76.9% on free throws on 26 attempts, 29.6% on threes on 71 attempts. And I know that Molly Davis has not played in a bit. I don't know if she's going to play or not, but I'm going to go ahead and mention her. She's 5'7" guard. That's a senior. 6.1 points per game. 2.6 rebounds per game. 3.1 assists per game. 0.7 steals per game. 1.2 turnovers per game. 1.3 fouls per game. 85.7% on threes on 28 attempts. 40.7% on threes on 54 attempts. And the other player I'm going to mention is Sharon Goodman. I don't know if she's going to even play or not. Okay, it's trying to load here, so I apologize for the delay. She's a 6'3" center. That's a junior, by the way. 4.5 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 0.6 blocks per game, 0.8 turnovers per game, 1.3 fouls per game. 75% on free throws on 28 attempts. That's pretty much all the players you need to know. Like I said, I don't know about Molly Davis and all this. So, and across the board for both of these teams, you gotta give it your all. This is the last game of the year, regardless. I mean, that's obvious. You gotta limit your foul trouble while getting them in foul trouble, especially the better players on the team. That's another thing. And you gotta keep your cool because you don't want technical fouls or flagrant ones or flagrant twos. And I'm even talking to the coaches about this. You don't want to get attacked in this game because it very well could cost you. 2 shots and the ball. I mean, it's the truth. And you certainly don't want to be thrown out of this game here. I'm stating facts. I mean, of course, you got to out-rebound the other team if you can. And you got to get good shot selection on offense while making them uncomfortable on defense. Getting them to hard shots and contest everything and contain the shooters, contain the slashers, and make those 3-point shooters drive to the basket. Though I know Iowa did that last game and it worked, and UConn doesn't have a lot of depth. Anyway, I'm just telling the truth because of 8 players, but you get the point here. You got to take care of the ball. You got to take care of the ball, especially better than for both of these teams in the first half into this game. I'm just telling the truth because if you're down double digits, I don't know I know Iowa came back from 12 points down to win the game. And I know that they're resilient. Both teams all are resilient. I mean, look, South Carolina was pushed by Tennessee in that SEC tournament game. And yes, it got close. And they even trailed and they could have lost that game. But they made a game-winning shot. And they were pushed by Oregon State late. Oregon State a little bit in that game in Elite Eight, but in the Sweet 16 they blew a big time lead, but they held on. So you got to protect leads, obviously, and you got to be resilient if you're trying to come back. I mean, you got to make adjustments on the fly, both offensively and defensively, and you don't know how the officiating is going to be, and I hope it's really a well officiated game. Because the last thing we want is referees to make bad calls in games. Though I know you can make the claim to last night on Iowa got fortunate because of that call on Lee Edwards. When you look at it in slow-mo, that was an illegal screen. She was wider than her base, and she was moving, and her elbows were out. That's all I got to say about that. But I just want them to be consistent on both ends. That's all we want. Wanting this game right. I mean, call it fair on both ways. But still, you cannot let them play into the refs. You gotta find a way to not make a particular call, really affect the game when you had all the controllables in your face. Like you try to control the controllables. You got to get some points out turnovers, points on the paint, some. You got to get some transition points. Of course, on defense, you want to limit that. And you don't want the other team to go to the free throw line a bunch on defense. But, of course, if you get to the free throw line, you got to make them count. I mean, that's the thing. Because they're free points. You got to take advantage of it. It's not a contest in your face. And both teams should play loose and easy. The only thing you got to lose is the national championship. You just got to play your game. And I would say I would probably play with less pressure because they're the underdogs in this game. Because South Carolina is favored by 6.5 points. And I would just need to beat a hunter and not the hunted. And obviously South Carolina is going to be the hunted in this situation. And all the pressure, some of the pressure is on them. But I know on Iowa there's some pressure too because, look, you got a bunch of seniors that are not coming back for another year because WNBA 5th year or even 6th year players, you're out. I mean, you're out of there and you don't want to have any regrets. And the same thing goes for those South Carolina players that are 5th year seniors or even declare for the WNBA draft like Camila Cardoso. You don't want to have any regrets. You don't want to especially have a bad game. And I would dare to say for South Carolina, you kind of have to do what UConn did against Caitlin Clark, to be honest. Make her ineffective. That did work last night. It did. But then she got hers in the second half, and Hannah Stuelke went off. So you got to do something with the other players. You can't just contain Caitlin Clark. You got to contain the others. And it's the same thing goes for like Iowa. Try to slow down Camila Cardoso and try to take away everybody else as much as possible. And you know, this game is looming on the mind of South Carolina because remember, last year in the Final Four, South Carolina lost to this team. This exact Iowa team. And I know it might have been some players. Some players on South Carolina are gone now, but some of those players were here playing against Iowa last year, and majority of those Iowa players, I believe, are back this year. So you got to do something about, and you got to contain the three. You got to limit the 3-point shooting for both teams here. You got to do something about the 3-point shooting. And obviously, if you're in a situation where you're trapped and all this, you might need to call a timeout. I mean, you don't want to get it to a like you got a situation where you throw the ball away. I mean, that's the thing, and you got to be smart with your turnovers. You don't want a live ball necessarily, which I will say it's important in this game because live ball turnovers could lead to transition baskets, and you got to try to make it as hard as possible on defense for both of these teams. And you got to slow down the best players while taking away the role players as much as possible. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. Nothing would shock me in this game in the slightest. One, Iowa's defeated South Carolina. But I will say South Carolina is more equipped a little bit this year. They have three-point shooting. They have a little bit more three-point shooting. But at the same time, I know South Carolina has a lot of depth and a lot of size. I mean, and this is kind of like similar to, for Iowa side of things, to the LSU game, except South Carolina is a different beast. And not only that, they have more three-point shooting than LSU does. And I would especially try to get Camilo Cardoso in foul trouble if you're Iowa in this game. You might need to just drive. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Just got to be smart with the ball. You got to be ball tough. Because what if somebody tries to rip the ball away from you, and be prepared for the press. Of course, be prepared for zone defense besides man-to-man. And I'm not just saying making adjustments on the fly, but offensively and defensively from first half to second half or first quarter, second quarter, third quarter to fourth. It's possession by possession. I mean, besides media break to media break, timeout to timeout. And you don't want to have like illegal screens in this game or offensive fouls because that's a turnover. And it will hurt you on the fouls anyway. So, anyways, if you like this content, hit the like and subscribe it. See you guys later on the road to 600 subscribers. Of course, ultimate goal is 1,000 or more. So, when money out this course, like a video, comment video, really helps YouTube algorithms so more people can see it. Sharing the video does help as well so more people can watch. And if you're watching and not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. It's free, the notification bell as well. And I will recap this game tomorrow, regardless of result. And I'll go over the roster outlook for both of these teams pending transfer portal.